lately, conversations. Conversations out and about in town for, well, this month probably more than any other month in my life. I've been hearing about people talking about disciplining of children and what's appropriate discipline and what is abuse. And it all started, it seems, with Adrian Peterson and all of that discussion. And so I've been overhearing people talking about this, it seems, wherever I go. But it goes beyond appropriate discipline or abuse. It's gone into, well, there's this charity Adrian Peterson has, and apparently the charity said it gave some money to another charity and didn't give any money to that other charity. And then there's this credit card that the charity has that was used to throw a party where all kinds of inappropriate things happen. And then there was this issue of the little weed that was smoked that may mean his bail is revoked and he spent some time back in jail. And all the while this is happening, what is it? Adrian Peterson gets $696,000 a week during the on-season. So he's still drawing his salary and won't go hungry. One would think $500,000 a week. Wouldn't you think $500,000 a week plus would allow you to make some really healthy, good choices in your life? Apparently that's not necessarily true. We don't seem wired to choose health, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, at least to choose it all that well. It seems to be something we have to practice at. One would think a people free from Pharaoh's crushing rule and steeped in faith that their leader is up on a mountain talking with God. One would think they would be looking toward a bright and happy future. And yet what we hear is there's this emptiness inside of them. This fidgeting of the mind, this disquiet of the soul. And they search for something more. And they can't shake their desire for something any more than King David, who looked out over his roof onto another roof and saw another man's wife bathing there and just had to have it. Or Noah and his sons, after their whole ordeal on the ark, finding themselves hitting land again and then having a party where they crossed some lines and drank too much and all of that. We hear the wedding party story today about this king who sets up this wonderful banquet, and suddenly the people who are invited have other things to do. Other things. The Bible is filled with stories of human beings who know what they should do, but just don't quite do it. And the newspaper is filled with stories of human beings who know what they should do and just can't quite do it. And if we were followed around 24/7 with cameras on us, what would Jesus do? Well, oftentimes we would know, but the cameras would reveal that we weren't doing what Jesus would do. This last week I was passed by somebody. I was going 55 in a 55 zone, and this person was frustrated by that. Passed me, lifted the finger, and on the back I saw this little Christian fish on the bumper that reminded me of the person's faith. That's kind of like each of us, actually. We live in this world where a football player in the midst of struggles is making $696,000 plus a week. And children in this country are going to bed hungry each night. And that tells us something about our priorities, where we invest our time and our energy and our love and our interests. And we can't change those things overnight. But what I've learned, one spiritual lesson, probably the biggest spiritual lesson that I've learned from having diabetes is this. Health is a life walk. And sometimes you take a step in the right direction. Sometimes that piece of whatever should have been halved, or the carbohydrates are overdone, or the exercise doesn't happen. And a person can fret about that, a person can guilt themselves about it, a person can regret it, but none of that's productive. What's productive is taking another step back in the right direction, in the healthy direction. Every step in the right direction in our lives is always a step in the right direction. And one step closer is one step closer, and that's no small thing. We have this image of God getting outright angry at the people about this golden calf, and outright angry at the people who won't come to the banquet. But we also have this image of God who says, all right, change plans. We're going to invite anybody to this party who is willing to come. Change plans. I'm going to keep working with my people one step at a time. Anybody that we heard last week was humility. The second step is prioritizing. And prioritizing actually is not just naming where we want to go, but taking a step toward it. Norman Shawchuck writes this prayer. He writes, "My Lord Jesus Christ, who touch all my being, open the secret and knowing chamber of my life to yourself. My Lord, possess me and fill me. I give you permission to enter my entire life, all of it. I'm not asking for a light touch or a redecoration. I'm asking for a complete reconstruction of my desires, my appetites, my priorities, and time and activity, and I willingly abandon myself to you." What would life look like if we willingly abandoned our priorities to God's desires? We have glimpses of it. 250 dozen donuts made in a week for First Mile Mission last week. That's a glimpse of it. Some of you may not know that they made 60-some more dozen donuts this week for orders for the mission of this church and toward apportionments. That is a glimpse of it. The nicest fall Saturday, at least I think was the nicest Saturday, we had 8 people from this church sitting in a church in Savage, Minnesota, 4 hours away, learning about what it takes for a healthy church to grow in 2014. 8 people. Plus there were other churches there and other congregation representatives. We had way more than 8 people giving up the nicest fall Saturday to learn about what it means to be healthy and growing and sharing Jesus' love. And I don't know if this month's October gathering will be a nice Saturday or not, but we have more going again down to Savage for the meeting to learn even more. And this week, the Healthy Church Initiative team and the prayer group will gather together and spend some time actually figuring out how to do their homework and how to invest more time and energy in the life and the future of this church and this community. That's a glimpse of what it means to reprioritize. Or how about coming to church? Yes, God, I like to be plugged in. Yes, God, I like to be filled. But today, God, let it not be about me and whether I'm filled. Today, God, all I ask is that you show me some way to help another along the journey. A closer walk begins with those things, with begging God, asking God into our lives, giving God permission not just to redecorate, but to reconstruct our lives. Shawchuck's prayer is not an easy one. And some days God's will have more sway in our lives than others. I expect that's the way it is for me. But all days, that closer walk begins with begging of God, work within me. Shape my priorities. Lead me where you need me to be. And help me to push aside the stuff that isn't important. And there's a peace in it. And there is a sense of being close to God when we focus on God's tasks and desires for us. Thanks be to God.